How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. With the trade deadline less than a week away on November 1st, the Packers should make a move for a wide receiver now more than ever, especially with our depleted wide receiver group and the underperforming wide receiving group. Feels like the Packers are always trying or making calls towards a receiver in the past 5 years, but they never really make a move. But this year, we should definitely make a move now more than ever. At least before, we used to have at least like Devontae Adams or Jordy Nelson. Like, we always had a receiver, an actual number one receiver too, where it wasn't that important. But this year, Allen Lazard being our number one, who I don't think is actually a true number one, and him being hurt now with that shoulder injury, it's actually more important this year to actually trade for a very good receiver. So getting right into it, I have 5 receivers here that I feel like the Green Bay Packers should attempt to trade for and hopefully trade for one of them. I highly doubt we'll get more than one of them, so let's say one of them. So the first receiver on my list is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has probably been on our list of trade targets for the past few years, especially with how productive he's been with each team, and especially with the Texans, who haven't really had a good quarterback in the last few years. It's very weird with Brandon Cooks because it feels like he is constantly producing with every team he goes to, despite who the quarterback is, and produces 1,000 yards receiving, and yet he gets traded for a first-round pick every single time. It's very weird why he hasn't found a home. It kind of seems like he's found a home for the Texans, but considering they are 1-4-1 currently, they might be trying to shop him, especially at the age of 28, and they're in a slight rebuild mode, so I don't know where Brandon Cooks are in their plans. So he might actually be a trade target for us, and apparently there are rumors that other teams have inquired about Brandon Cooks and trading for him. So he's a trade target in my opinion. He's a very good receiver. He's got the resume. He's a veteran receiver, and I think he would be able to click with Aaron Rodgers and stretch the field and produce very well for us. Second receiver I have on my list is Jerry Judy. Jerry Judy's name has been thrown into trade talks as of late. I don't know how legitimate they could be, but apparently he is a good trade target for us, especially since he is a former number one receiver who has produced decently well for the Broncos, but the Broncos are struggling currently this year, especially with high aspirations. Kind of sounds like us. The Broncos are currently sitting at 2-5 and last place in their The Broncos are currently sitting at 2-5, losing the last 4 games in the AFC West division. That is very competitive, with the Chiefs leading the division at 5-2. So they've quickly dug themselves in a hole, and they might be looking to offload a receiver or two, and might consider this season a wash, especially since they do have Tim Patrick, who is on IR, who I thought would be their second receiver ahead of Jerry Judy halfway through the season this year if he didn't get injured. So I feel like Jerry Judy could be a slight casualty, especially since he's got a year and a half left on his contract. They might want to offload it to try and get some picks and try to retool for next season. Now, if the Broncos feel like this season isn't a wash, then they probably won't trade him, as he is the second leading target receiver on that team. So that's a lot of targets they would have to find elsewhere, and I don't know if they feel like KJ Hamler would be good enough to replace Jerry Judy this year. So it kind of also depends on where the organization feels like the Broncos are and if they can run the table like we did. Now, the next receiver on my list is a receiver that's been highly talked about. We've been linked with this receiver for a little bit now, and I personally would love to see us trade for, and I think a lot of Packers fans would also like to see us trade for, is DJ Moore. DJ Moore has been a very, very productive receiver in his tenure with the Panthers, and it seems like no matter what quarterback they've had, between Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, the guy produces. And despite this year kind of being a down year, they do have Baker Mayfield at quarterback. The previous 3 years for the Panthers, the dude has produced over 1,000 yards receiving with quarterbacks that aren't considered good. And especially with the firing of Matt Rule, and they just traded CMC, it looks like they're going to go in a full rebuild mode. Now, the organization has stated that they want to keep their core young players. And initially, a lot of people thought CMC was actually on that list, and they've stated that he was untradeable, and yet here they go trading him to the 49ers. So despite DJ Moore being a young core piece, he might still be available. What his price tag is going to be a little difficult. Now his actual cap room or his cap hit is very high, so they're going to have to negotiate that, who's going to eat the contract, and try to make room for him if we actually traded for him. And then B, what type of compensation, because there's rumors that for Brent Burns, they declined 2 first-round picks, which I probably would have taken if I were the Panthers, especially if I'm in rebuild mode. So if they decline 2 first-round picks for Brent Burns, I have no idea what their evaluation of DJ Moore is and what they could be asking for. But if the Packers can make it happen, I would love to see DJ Moore in the green and gold, and I think he'd be an instant the number 1 receiver and produce very well, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. Next up, we have Chase Claypool, the other receiver that's been highly talked about being traded for by the Packers. Apparently, there are rumors that Chase Claypool is the receiver that we are really gunning for and might be the top trade candidate that the Packers organization is going for, and they are trying hard to get him. Chase Claypool's career in Pittsburgh has kind of been up and down. It looked like he was going to be a kind of a superstar, especially with Antonio Brown leaving, and dude was just producing. But this year, he's kind of at a down year, and it looks like he might not be in their future plans over there in Pittsburgh, especially with number 1 receiver Deontay Johnson, who is a really good receiver for them. Then the drafting of George Pickens. And with how the Pittsburgh organization typically works, they have their top 2 receivers, and it seems like Chase Claypool could not be in their future plans, especially since this season they're just not a good football team. Quarterbacks in disarray between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett starting at quarterback, and that quarterback carousel. I mean, eventually Kenny Pickett's going to probably take the helm. And I don't know if Chase Claypool is in their future plan. So he could just be a casualty, and they might be looking to trade him, especially since there is a year and a half left on their deal, or on his deal, and they might be trying to get something for him. And of course, if you look at what type of receivers the Green Bay Packers like to go for, Chase Claypool fits that mold. The Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur's offense, Chase Claypool is that guy, and he fits it completely. He's standing at 6'4", 238 pounds, and he ran a 4.42 combine 40 time. So he is pretty much everything the Packers kind of look for in a receiver. So he definitely fits the mold. And the only thing I wonder is how much are the Packers willing to give up? Because allegedly, according to Sports Illustrated's Bill Huber, they are looking for Christian McCaffrey compensation, which was next year's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round pick, and the following year's 5th round pick. So that's a lot of picks, and the Packers tend to not like to trade their picks. If they trade a 3rd round pick, I'm fine with that, because historically we are terrible in the 3rd round, so just get rid of all 3rd round picks at this rate. But it's going to come down how much the Steelers are actually asking for and how much the Packers are willing to pay for his services. Then lastly, we have a receiver that I haven't really heard at all throughout the newswire, and that's Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is an interesting trade target for us. I think he is a very good receiver, very reliable, very durable. He's produced with the Bengals for a while. I actually thought he was going to be their number 1 receiver, especially with AJ Green leaving and all the injuries they were surmounting during that time. But somehow he's been knocked down to 3rd, especially with the emergence of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Now, his cap hit is $10 million, which is a lot for your 3rd receiver, especially when he's not even 3rd in target share. Now, obviously, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are above him in target share, but then you have Hayden Hurst, who is outproducing him in targets as well. So he's 4th on the target share list, and it could become where he becomes a casualty of where the team stands, and they might try to offload his contract, especially being a $10 million hit. So I feel like Boyd would actually be a very good target for us. Like I said, he's very reliable. He's a very good receiver. He's produced, and I would actually like to see him in the green and gold. Him or DJ Moore are my top 2 that I would like to see us trade for. Chase Claypool is 3rd for me just because of his inconsistencies. He's definitely got the form, but I don't know if he'll produce well for us, or is he a true number 1? He's got the build. I just don't know if he's a true number 1. At least with DJ Moore and Tyler Boyd, I feel like those 2 would definitely be a number 1 receiver for us and produce well. But let me know what you think down in the comments. If you like the video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. And as always, go Pack Go.